Trump administration refuses to take a holiday from sanctioning North Koreans. The Treasury Department announced the United States is sanctioning two it describes as key leaders of North Korea's unlawful weapons programs.
The U.S. military says ISIS has lost 98% of the territory it once held. Half those losses coming since President Trump took office.
The rules of engagement under the Obama administration were onerous.
You know what? They just will not let President Trump have a victory lap, no matter what.
I just started using my hands and my fists, just pounding on the ice to break the ice, to get out to where he was.
Not a lot of days you kick off your morning at 4:01 with the 11 spoonful. But that's what we're doing today. Good Wednesday morning, everybody. You're watching Fox and Friends First. I'm Todd Pirro in for Heather Childers. President Trump hard at work making America great again from the winter White House in Mar-a-Lago. First, turning up the heat on North Korea with brand new sanctions. But that's not all. Griff Jenkins live for us in Washington, D.C. with what else the president is working on. Good morning, Griff.
Good morning, Todd. It may be sunny in Florida, but it's no break from the threat of North Korea. The Treasury Department slapping sanctions on two individuals described as key leaders of the rogue regime's nuclear weapons program, Kim Jong-sik and Ri Pong-chol. Steve Mnuchin, secretary, saying in a statement, Treasury is targeting leaders of North Korea's ballistic missile programs as part of our maximum pressure campaign to isolate the DPRK and achieve a fully denuclearized Korean peninsula. The move follows a UN Security Council resolution imposing new sanctions on money flow and the president's comments before he departed from Mar-a-Lago.
There is much more work to do. America and its allies will take all necessary steps to achieve a denuclearization and ensure that this regime cannot threaten the world.
Todd, there are reports that even Russian President Vladimir Putin is trying to play peacemaker and mediate between the U.S. and North Korea. But that's not all the president's working on behind closed doors at the winter White House, tweeting yesterday, business looking really good for next year. Will be a great year for companies and jobs. Stock market poised for another year of success as the president signals he wants to tackle infrastructure early next year, something he believes he can finally get bipartisan support for. And at least one Democrat, Debbie Dingell, is open to it.
We've got an aging infrastructure with potholes and highways that aren't working and bridges that are in trouble. We need to do something together to fix our infrastructure if we're going to stay competitive as a nation.
So there are no scheduled events down in Mar-a-Lago. We'll have to wait and see what the day brings, perhaps through the president's preferred means of communications, Twitter. Todd?
Griff Jenkins live for us in Washington. Griff, thank you. President Trump once again winning on the world stage and keeping a key campaign promise, obliterating ISIS. Casey Stiegel here to break down the brand new numbers the mainstream media won't show you. Hey, Casey.
Hey, Todd, good to see you. When Mr. Trump was running for president, out on the campaign trail, who could forget he repeatedly promised to eradicate the terror group once and for all.
We will find you, we will destroy you, and we will win.
I would bomb the out of them.
We're going to knock out ISIS so violently and so fast.
Well, in less than a year, the numbers would suggest his administration is succeeding. The U.S. military reports that ISIS has lost 98% of the territory that it once held. Half of those losses have occurred since President Trump took office. It is a drastic change in the war on terror compared to the previous administration, who once referred to the cold-blooded terrorists as the JV team. We're talking 45,000 fighters. Now it's reportedly down to around 1,000. What's more, the ISIS footprint has shrunk, and by a lot. Check this out. The State Department releasing this map to put it all into perspective for us. At one point, ISIS controlled an area about the size of Ohio. Today, it only controls a very small region, primarily along the border there of Syria and Iraq. Now, the White House crediting nearly 30,000 U.S.-led airstrikes and a beefed-up presence on the ground for killing more than 70,000 jihadists. Many in the military say President Trump's hands-off approach is what's winning. Instead of being politically correct, they say, the commander-in-chief has allowed top commanders to do what they do best, which is kill the bad guys.
The Obama administration micromanaged the war, and what the Trump administration did was allow execution decisions to be made in accordance with the guidance that he provided. We could have accomplished our objectives through the use of overwhelming power in 3 months, not 3 years.
Now, U.S.-backed forces have also been credited with freeing nearly 5.3 million people in that region. Todd?
Those are good numbers, but we're not quite done yet. A little bit more work to go on the ISIS front. Casey, thanks. President Trump's victory obliterating ISIS isn't the only thing the mainstream media has been ignoring. The booming economy as well as the Republican tax plan have also gotten very little positive coverage. Republican strategist Noel Nickpour says the media refuses to give credit where credit is due.
They just will not let President Trump have a victory lap, no matter what. And you know what? Trump really did do this. What he said is what he fulfilled. He fulfilled promises, unlike what President Obama did, which is he got health care through, but it was riddled with low enrollment. You couldn't keep your own doctor. And then now the premium increase is what we're dealing with. And President Trump, when he campaigned on creating jobs, you can check that off. He's about to put money in middle-class Americans' pockets. You can check that off. So he's fulfilling his promises, and what he gets from mainstream media is constant negative. And I think that's a lot of the reason why Donald Trump has to tweet, so he can get his own message out there, because it's been negated so much from mainstream media.
An illegal immigrant with a violent past arrested again by Border Patrol agents, this time for trying to illegally re-enter the country. Agents say 60-year-old Alessio Ornelas previously served 15 years in jail for assaulting a peace officer, an officer who can write citations but may not carry a weapon. He was detained in the same area where Border Agent Rogelio Martinez was killed after suffering traumatic head injuries last month. Get this, new overnight, a packed plane forced to turn around 4 hours into its trip to Tokyo because a passenger got on the wrong plane. How does that happen? Flight took off from LAX, landing 8 hours later in LAX. After pulling a U-turn over the Pacific, model Chrissy Teigen and husband John Legend were on board. She broke the news on Twitter, writing, 4 hours into an 11-hour flight, and we're turning around because we have a passenger who isn't supposed to be on the plane. She writes pretty well for news, doesn't she? That's pretty straightforward. Why do we all got to go back? I do not know. The flight is due to take off again this morning. ANA Airlines is investigating what went wrong. Today's random drawing to determine the winner in the race for a crucial Virginia House seat has been postponed. Democrat Shelley Simmons now asking the court to reconsider its ruling after last week's recount, where it was determined she and Republican incumbent David Yancey tied with 11,608 votes each. Simmons briefly had the lead by just one vote, but the judges ruled one ballot was invalid. If Simmons eventually wins that seat, it would tip the balance of power in the legislature at an even 50-50. Wow. Senator Orrin Hatch firing back at the newspaper that wants him to retire. The Utah lawmaker spokesperson accusing the Salt Lake Tribune of pursuing an unquenchable thirst for clicks. The jab coming hours after the paper declared him the Utahn of the Year for his alleged thirst for power and slamming his role in the GOP tax reform bill. Hatch sarcastically tweeting, "Grateful for this great Christmas honor from the Salt Lake Tribune." Merry Christmas to the NBA. Ratings reaching an all-time high on Christmas Day as the NFLs continue to tank. Monday's 5 NBA games were rated nearly 20% higher over last year, including the Oklahoma City and Houston game, which drew in a 4.1 rating, making it the league's highest primetime Christmas game since 2003. The NFL's Monday Night Football game drew in a 6.7 rating between the Philadelphia Eagles and Oakland Raiders, which is down 9% from the average Monday Night Football matchup. Pretty sure that's because America doesn't like Jillian Mealy's team. She's going to get so mad when I see her in an hour. Time now to brew on this. If Santa didn't bring exactly what was on your wish list this year, you're not alone.
That is the most precious thing I've ever seen in my life. You look like a deranged Easter bunny.
Turns out people open about $90 billion worth of unwanted gifts this Christmas. For those who don't re-gift, that means a major boost for the shipping business as people send those bunny ears back. UPS says people returned almost 6 million packages after last year's Christmas, so we want to know, what's the worst gift you got this year? Email us at friendsfirst@foxnews.com or let us know on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Time now, 10 minutes after the hour. Do not disturb. The big security change coming to Disney Resort hotels requiring staff to inspect your room daily. And President Trump says he signed Obamacare's death certificate with tax reform. So will the Affordable Care Act flatline without the individual mandate? Why our next guest says it's just a matter of time. And the liberal media going out on a limb claiming First Lady Melania Trump is chopping down a 200-year-old tree at the White House. The side of the story they aren't telling you when Fox and Friends First on a Wednesday morning returns. Welcome back. 3 major U.S. cities now suing the Pentagon. New York City, San Francisco, and Philadelphia claim the Department of Defense failed to report service member crimes to the federal gun background check database. The suit claims that problem helped the gunman in the deadly Texas church massacre buy the weapons he used to kill 26 people despite his prior conviction. Attorney General Jeff Sessions has already launched his own investigation. One of President Trump's promises of investigating voter fraud in the 2016 election can now resume. An appeals court ruling the watchdog group Electric Privacy Information Center does not have legal standing to sue. The Voter Fraud Commission, headed by Vice President Pence, sparked national outrage when it asked all 50 states for voter information. The group plans to appeal that ruling. The Republican tax plan poking holes in the Affordable Care Act by repealing the individual mandate, but not yet fully getting rid of the law. President Trump, though, thinks Republicans and Democrats will come together and agree on a plan to ultimately get rid of Obamacare. So is he right? Here now is attorney and former policy advisor and spokesperson to Governor Jeb Bush, Justin Safey. It's a simple question, Justin. Is he right?
I think he is right, absolutely. And look, the individual mandate forced Americans who did not have health insurance to either buy or pay a penalty to the federal government for not purchasing health insurance, and they got nothing in return. Millions of Americans did not buy health insurance. They paid the penalty, and now by Congress getting rid of this and the president signing it into law to remove the penalty for those people, that's going to basically tear down Obamacare. It's going to lead to the collapse. It's really catastrophic for what was really President Obama's one of his signature legislative accomplishments. So a lot of credit is deserved for the Republicans in Congress and President Trump for doing that.
All right, let's get to the president's tweet now. He writes, based on the fact that the very unfair and unpopular individual mandate has been terminated as part of our tax cut bill, which essentially repeals overtime Obamacare, the Democrats and Republicans will eventually come together and develop a great new health care plan. Will this happen on a bipartisan basis like the president predicts?
Well, you have to give credit to the president for wanting to get it done on a bipartisan basis. It should be done on a bipartisan basis. There are enough Republicans, there are enough Democrats in Congress that want to have a good health care system for our country. The question is, will the Democrats, now that the Republicans have been successful in getting rid of the individual mandate penalty and the mandate, will they want to work with the Republicans? But clearly something needs to be done. Even your most hardcore Democrat agrees that Obamacare had some shortcomings in it. So this is a perfect opportunity for the president to show leadership and for the Democrats and the Republicans in Congress to work together to try to improve upon and to and have a reform that will actually work for the American people.
In your research on this topic, you write, we can expect to see more competitive, smaller government solutions to our health care system. What are those, and what do you mean by that?
Well, I think that one of the problems with Obamacare was that it was a big government solution where you had the U.S. government saying to every American, you have to buy health insurance, you have to pay a penalty to the IRS if you don't. I think there are a lot of reforms that Republicans in Congress have passed, in previous years. Speaker Paul Ryan has talked about some of these things, like allowing insurance to be health insurance to be bought and sold across state lines, or other free market competitive oriented reforms that don't involve a big government solution like we saw in Obamacare. So those are the types of things that I think that members of Congress can propose and that you should see advanced in the coming months.
And quickly, one little piece of housekeeping. The mandate does not officially go away until 2019, correct?
Yes, that's correct. It's still in 2018 coming up, a few days away. That's still in effect, but it won't go into the elimination of the penalty won't go into effect until 2019. But once again, this was a central feature of President Obama's legacy, and it's really remarkable that to me that's really a big news story that didn't really get as much coverage because of the tax bill getting so much attention last week.
Justin Safey, thank you very much. Have a great day. Time now 19 minutes after the hour. Low supply, high demand. Airlines now recruiting at the college level. The career path taking off to new heights.
If there was a hero that night, it's us. It's not me. I was just the one that went in the water.
And a hero cop uses his bare hands to punch through a frozen pond to save a little boy's life. The Christmas miracle that's going to make your morning. Airlines across the country battling a growing pilot shortage that could reach crisis levels. Alicia Acuna takes a look at what's being done to step up recruitment.
So I always knew I wanted to be a pilot, so it was just kind of a luck of the draw kind of thing.
Scott Frank's love of flying could not have been better timed. The recent graduate from the aviation school at Metro State University, Denver, is entering an industry in desperate need of commercial pilots.
There are restrictions, if you will, in terms of how many pilots there are, but it hasn't really hit home yet. The real hit's going to be in the next 3 to 5 years.
According to Boeing, in the next 2 decades, the industry will need 117,000 new commercial pilots in North America and 637,000 worldwide.
Yes, there is a pilot shortage.
Now, major carriers are following the lead of regionals and starting to fill the pipeline at the collegiate level.
Having a promise while you're still in the academic environment is priceless compared to how it used to work.
Aspiring commercial pilots used to come up through the military or regional airlines. Now places like MSU's Worldwide Indoor Airport train students who are actively being recruited by major carriers. Frank is headed for an internship with United, which if all goes well, he will never leave.
I can pretty much skip that regional area and just go straight to United.
The Airline Pilots Association International insists there is no shortage and says some airlines got themselves into this situation.
And some of the other ultra low-cost carriers who don't keep up with wages, benefits, and work-life balance issues that you might see more accepting conditions at the large global carriers.
Regional airlines have already been forced to increase pay and offer signing bonuses, which is something that was unheard of 10 years ago. Now those same small regionals are going to have additional competition from the big carriers, which are dipping into those same colleges. In Denver, Alicia Acuna, Fox News.
The rebuilding of a church destroyed on 9/11 put on hold thanks to rising costs and an investigation into how donations are being spent. The St. Nicholas National Shrine was originally supposed to cost $50 million, but the New York Times reports it's now up to $78 million. No word on when construction will continue. Newsweek coming under fire for a scathing fake headline blaming Melania Trump for ordering a 200-year-old tree be cut down. It turns out it was the U.S. National Arboretum that recommended the removal of the historic Jackson magnolia. Why, you say? Well, because it's dead, dangerous, and it's actually falling down despite efforts to save it. Newsweek has yet to apologize for the report that many are calling an attempt to smear the First Lady. Time now 25 minutes after the hour. The countdown to 2018 is on, and it's not too late to cash in on your tax return. From charities to itemizing, the tax breaks you can still get for 2018. And maybe Pam should stick to answering the phones like she did in The Office. Well, actress Jenna Fisher slammed for spreading fake news about the GOT tax bill. Say it ain't so, Pam. A soldier may prove North Korea is preparing for biological warfare. South Korean media reporting a man who defected this year had anthrax antibodies in his system. It's unclear who it was. An official says either the man was exposed to it or was vaccinated against it. This report comes amid claims the rogue regime's latest tests involve mounting the dangerous bacteria onto missiles capable of reaching the U.S. Texas Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee playing the race card as the reason for the accusations. She received special treatment on a United Airlines flight. Passenger Jean Marie Simon posting this photo saying she was unfairly bumped from her first-class seat headed to D.C. in favor of the Democratic Congresswoman. Lee doubling down on the claims, writing, quote, "Since this was not any fault of mine, the way the individual continued to act appeared to be, upon reflection, because I was an African-American woman. Seemingly an easy target, along with the African-American flight attendant, who was very, very nice." Simon says she has still not received a formal apology from United Airlines. All right, maybe she should stick to acting. Jenna Fisher admitting to tweeting false facts about the president's tax bill after getting called out on Twitter. The Office star tweeting, quote, "I can't stop thinking about how school teachers can no longer deduct the cost of their classroom supplies on their taxes, something they shouldn't have to pay for with their own money in the first place. I mean, imagine if nurses had to go buy their own syringes, #UGG. Twitter users fired back, informing her that the $250 school supplies deduction was included in the final bill. And going into the commercial, I may have said GOT tax bill instead of GOP. We have our researchers looking to see if there is a Game of Thrones tax bill. Unclear as to right now. All right, speaking of taxes, just 5 days left in 2017. That means tax time right around the corner. So what can you do right now to save the most money this tax season? Here with 5 tips to help you maximize your return, certified public accountant and small business advocate Jean Marks. Jean, you hear the excitement in my voice. I actually get stoked about taxes. So let's get it started. Number 1, you say pay your property and local tax if you can. Explain that.
Yeah, absolutely right. So the whole idea here, remember, is that tax rates are going down next year. So what you want to do while tax rates are higher this year is to try to accelerate as many expenses as you possibly can into this year so you can take advantage of those deductions. Remember, we have 4 days left to do that. So you're right, property taxes is the first thing. Now, it's not as easy as it sounds. You really should call up your township or your state and make sure that you're able to do that. But if you can take a deduction for your property taxes, get it done this year because the tax advantages to it much higher. They go down in 2018.
Okay, Gene, the next one I was a little bit taken off guard on. I thought that charitable contributions were separate and distinct from your itemized deductions, but you're telling me you need to make those charitable contributions now, this year, for 2018, because you're not going to get to deduct them if you don't itemize in 2018.
Right. Well, there's a whole lot of different things about it, but let's just leave it at this because we have such a short time, is that you want to make charitable contributions as much as you want this year. Again, it actually, Todd, goes along the same principle where, again, we're in a year now where tax rates are higher and they're going to go down next year. So bring in as many expenses or deductions that you possibly can that you can control. You might as well take those deductions now while the rates are higher. Charities is a perfect example, Todd. I mean, you can take that deduction right now, and there's only 4 days left in the year. You can still get it done. Take that deduction now when taxes are higher, give to your charities. You'll get a much bigger tax benefit for doing that.
All right, next one on the list, accelerate business-related expenses like supplies, dues, home office.
Even teachers' expenses, if that's part of your that's part of your business as well. But yeah, if you're a freelancer, you're out on your own, you're doing work, or even if you have unreimbursed business expenses from your employer, my advice is to take those expenses where you can this year. Perfect example is if you have like supplies that you're buying for your office at home or your office related to work, go ahead, go out to Staples or whatever, buy all those supplies now this year that you might be using next year. Take the deduction if you can this year. Again, while tax rates are higher, you want to accelerate the deductions into this year, and you want to defer any kind of income into next year that you can. So if you're on your own, try and get those deductions out of the way while you're still in 2017.
The next one on your list always seems like a good idea. Max out your retirement contributions.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, not enough of us do that, Todd. I mean, we don't put away as much as we should either into our 401k or into our IRA accounts. This actually has nothing to do really with tax reform. I mean, the rules have really not significantly changed with the new bill. But we just tell that to all of our clients. Listen, put away as much as you can. If you're a small business owner, get a 401k plan set up for your employees. Put away as much as you can to match theirs, and then you can also save as much as you can that way too. So 401k is a really good idea. By the way, 529 plans, ask your accountant about that as well. You can now put more money in to take it out for private school education. So that's something to keep in mind too.
That's a good point. And quickly on the last one, prepay home equity interest if you can.
Yeah, home equity interest is going away next year as a deduction, so you want to take those deductions if you can this year. Talk to your bank and see if you can prepay those deductions and get them out of the way, and that way you can maximize it before it disappears in 2018. Again, just final words, you want to accelerate as many deductions as you want, Todd, into this year, 2017, and then defer legally, wherever you can, any income into 2018, because remember, tax rates are going to be lower next year. You might as well be taxed less.
I think accountants are going to be the celebs of 2018 as they try to navigate this tax bill. Gene Marks, thank you very much. I love this stuff. Turning now to some extreme weather. I don't think anybody likes this. A bitter Arctic blast gripping millions across our country, with 20 states from Colorado to Maine under a wind chill advisory. All this after record-breaking snow fell on Christmas Day. Look at that. Pennsylvania getting more than 4 feet of snow. A little lake effect snow there, while New York braces for up to 6 feet. And there's a deep freeze in the Midwest. People in Wisconsin waking up to temperatures falling to minus 16. Minnesota, minus 21, with a wind chill of minus 44. Oof. All right, great story here. A hero deputy saves the life of a freezing child by punching through a frozen pond to reach him. An 8-year-old boy in Utah fell through the ice chasing his dog on Christmas. Sergeant Eric Thompson took off his gear and went into the water, rescuing him in just minutes.
I couldn't feel anything. I didn't notice anything when I was doing it. I knew that time was of the essence. I had a very short window to get that child out of the water. So I pulled his head up above the water, and I just called out to the paramedics, letting them know I'm coming in, I've got it.
Thompson was treated for hypothermia and nerve damage. The boy still in the hospital. His dog was not hurt, but nevertheless, just an amazing story right there. Time now, 36 minutes after the hour. Colleges around the country bracing for more campus violence, and they're blaming supporters of the president. Why, our next guest says the standard they're setting is downright dangerous. A century-old Confederate statue destroyed, its face bashed in, and hands cut off. The shocking vandalism erasing history. And it was the moment that captivated the entire nation. April the giraffe. The song just caught me off guard. Finally giving birth after months of anticipation. Don't miss the top caught-on-camera moments of 2017. A Confederate statue that has stood in a Georgia cemetery for more than 100 years has been destroyed. Police say vandals bashed in the face of the soldier, cut off his hands, and took his rifle. Total damage about $200,000. The city is hoping to repair it, but police say they don't have any leads. Thousands of dollars worth of artwork belonging to a Trump campaign supporter destroyed. Lindy Lou Lehman accused of ripping paintings off walls and throwing sculptures across the room at the home of Texas attorney Anthony Busby. It's not clear how she got into that home. Busby hosted President Trump there during the 2016 election and donated $250,000 to his presidential campaign. All right, time now for some campus craziness spiraling out of control this year, with violent protests erupting over speeches from conservative speakers. Now college administrators bracing for a violent 2018. And they're blaming Trump supporters. Here now to weigh in, media director for campusreform.org and former digital director for Senator Marco Rubio's presidential campaign, Cabot Phillips. Mr. Phillips, good to see you as always. So what's going on?
The left has a special talent for blaming everything on President Trump. We know this. We see it every day. And now they're finding ways to blame the rise of these violent anti-fascist protesters, rioters on President Trump. Let's be honest here. The victims here are President Trump and his supporters, and the victim is free speech, ultimately. And too many administrators, college professors on campus, they're afraid to shut down these rioters, these protesters, because they don't want to be called intolerant by their fellow leftists. And so now, essentially, they're allowing free speech to be held hostage, where this coming year, they're admitting we feel conflicted between free speech but the safety of our students. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. You can have free speech and also defend the safety of your campus.
It seems to me like Antifa and a lot of other groups are sort of immune from punishment, sanction, immune from almost anything. Why is that?
It's because the violence, when it's committed against the right, is viewed as not only acceptable but also justifiable. One of their tactics is labeling everyone they disagree with as a Nazi. And they say, well, violence is acceptable against Nazis, so if they get everyone to agree, those people who support Trump, they're Nazis, violence is now acceptable control against a whole swath of American people just because they disagreed with. And you bring up a good point about accountability. There is very little accountability, especially on college campuses where law enforcement doesn't get involved. It's the administration that take care of these investigations. They throw a few, paperwork around, and then by the end of the day, no one actually gets in trouble, so they have no reason to change their tactics.
How do you suggest colleges and universities respond to what they fear coming up in 2018?
I think much of it starts with education, making sure people realize the importance of free speech, specifically on college campuses, and why it's so important to defend free debate, free discussion. And we've also covered at the Leadership Institute's Campus Reform how many students who are members of these Antifa groups don't actually know what they're protesting. Right. I was covering an Antifa protest at a speech down in Florida, and I asked the people, you're anti-fascist, can you define fascism for me? 9 out of 10 of the people I talked to had no idea what fascism was. They just saw it as an outlet for them to get their anger out and shut down people on the right.
Yeah, we've seen those clips in the news where they basically give President Trump's tax plan, but say this is Bernie Sanders' idea, and they're like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. We have to do it. And it's the exact same policy the president wants, just they put a wrong label on it. I want to sort of ask you this question, because I actually haven't had a chance to sit down with you yet and interview you. When did this start happening? Because I don't like to think of myself as old man River over here, but this was not the college that I went to. We had many, many sides and a lot of debate, but it was all civil. When did we get here?
This doesn't happen overnight. Really, for years now, the left has been stacking academia with leftists and people who agree with their agenda, and so it's begun to be a more gradual process where professors know now that they can use the classroom as sort of an indoctrination pulpit where they can get their views out there, not be as conservative teaching, because they know that everyone around them in administration, academia, they agree with their views. And so there's not going to be anyone who's going to clamp down and say, hey, you can't just teach your opinions, you got to teach the facts. And so it's been a gradual process. Our group, Campus Reform, is trying to expose the bias that goes on college campuses and make sure that taxpayer money is not being misused for indoctrination, and also make sure that professors are being held accountable by what they're saying in the classroom to the point where they're actually giving both sides of a discussion. Let students make up their own minds. Don't have these indoctrination factories where students come out thinking there's only one side to an issue, and they go into college impressionable and they come out thinking that leftist point of view is the only one they can have.
It's a shame. I had a professor, Dick Winters, who was so left. He wrote a treatise on welfare reform. Nobody in the class knew that he was a liberal because he was so fair and balanced. He should have worked here. He's a great man. Kat, as always, a pleasure. Thank you very much. Time now, 45 minutes after the hour. President Obama under fire for his green energy policies. Was he trying to save the world or just playing politics? And, did Santa miss the mark in your house? We're sharing the worst gifts you got this year when Fox and Friends First returns.